Hello everyone, I'm Dimitri, the creator of infranodus AI-based text network analysis tool. In this video, I'm going to show you how I use infranodus to write better texts and to see if I'm missing out something important from an article that I want to create, for example. I will use something that I'm working on at the moment, which is text that I'm writing. I'm actually using my Wordpress site for that, and it's a text about A2S practice I'm working on. So I'm just going to show you in real time, step by step, how I would use infranodus to make sure that I added all the important ideas into this text, and how I use the built-in AI tools and text network visualizations to see whether I can add something more that would be important for this particular discourse. So first of all, I'm just going to go and increase the screen here so you can see what I'm doing. And right now I'm inside the Wordpress interface for the website that I have where I'm writing about this practice. So here I already wrote a text, and now I'm kind of a little bit stuck, and this is where infranodus can be really helpful, because I can select this text and add it into infranodus to see how I could develop it further. So I'll just call it A2S description text, add this as a new graph here, and then I can simply paste this text here, and it will be visualized as a graph. For those of you who don't know how infranodus works, the nodes are represented, they represent the words, and the co-occurrences of the words are the connections, and this is how the graph is built up. And then the bigger nodes are the concepts that are more important and influential in this text, and if they have the same color and if they're located next to each other, then it means they appear in the same context. Right now I see directly that I had some settings from before, and this is a good opportunity for me to also show how you can change the settings to suit your use cases better. So you can simply go into settings here, and I want to change it to make sure that just sent to English, because by default it's auto-detect, but it's better to set it to the language that you're actually using. It's going to work faster and also be more precise. And I also want to set the node labels to be proportional to the node size. And I think the rest we can keep as it is. I think it looks good to me. So I save the settings, back into the graph which I created. A2S description text. So here we have the graph, and also there is a setting here that I like, that the label color will be the same as the nodes color. It just looks nicer like this, so I'm going to keep this. Okay, so first of all, when I look at the graph, it shows me what are the main concepts inside this text. I see that the main concepts are movement practice, physical, A2S. So this text is about physical movement practice. That's called A2S. This I know because I was writing this text, obviously. By the way, I'm following the new workflow here, which describes all the steps that you can do to analyze and to diagnose your text and to reveal some interesting ideas inside. So you can always open this workflow helper on the right and use this to check off the steps that you already completed. So right now we're at the second step of exploring the graph visualization. So I'm just looking at the graph to see what are the most important concepts that come up. Physical movement practice A2S, they all have the same color, so it means they belong to the same topic. That's great. Then I see that I'm writing a lot about exploring patterns, open. There's something about escalation. This is kind of like a concept that is very important to this practice. Then I'm mentioning some other practices like Vipassana meditation, Alexander technique. So this is good because I wanted to mention all these ideas. What I like to do at this stage when I look at the graph, I just try to see, like, okay, did I actually add everything that I thought was important to this topic? And for example, I know that a lot of times I present this practice in the artistic context, and at the moment I don't really see so much words and concepts that relate to the artistic aspect of this practice. So I already know that this is what I'm missing, and I need to add this into this text. And this is how I'm going to modify this text. I can actually even perform search, art, so I see martial art, okay, but just art is like a very small part about martial art, and that's not all what it's about. So when I was writing this text, I obviously focused too much on the conceptual framework behind it, and I kind of skipped the whole artistic part, which I'm going to fix now. I will check if there's any artistic aesthetics maybe. Okay, so we have also something about aesthetics. And here I see in which context I'm using this term. So it's concerned both with the aesthetics, but also with scientific understanding. Okay, but then again, this is not much. So I can add into this field here project notes that explore the artistic and aesthetic aspects of the practice. Save it. So this is like a note for myself to make sure I don't forget it after. And then I can check this off as complete. And by the way, here I already wrote down my insights. So this is also checked off, which means I've already done this part of the workflow for text diagnostics. And then I move on further, reveal high-level ideas. So this is a really good feature because it uses GPT-3 AI to show me what are the high-level ideas or the categories of thoughts that are present inside this text. I click show. What happens here is that it basically activates this show high-level ideas button. Then it shows me what this text is about. So I see that it thinks it's about focus exploration, open scale. So I know this is about the scale of operation. This is an important subject. Then body-mind. Okay, this is an important concept. And Tai Chi, which is basically a cluster of all the different inspirations that I had when I was developing this practice. I can also click here to see more topics. So I see there's much more. There's something about even gender hierarchy. It thinks the approach to the body. So this is interesting because here I'm talking about the capitalistic approach. Say what I must say. So here I found the topic and I'm kind of diving in to see what I'm talking about when I talk about this subject. And as you see, I'm basically studying my own text to see what are the concepts that tend to come up and if I covered all the ones that I felt were necessary. And sometimes I even forgot what I was writing because I wrote it a few weeks ago. So this is why here I'm saying yes, that it's about the dominant capitalistic gender hierarchies and how you can replace them with something more fluid. So, okay, this is interesting that this is inside. This makes me happy that this part of the discourse is in. Then I see much more stuff. It looks like I cover everything, but except for the art stuff. So this is how I'm going to add some more information in. So I'm going to check this off as complete. I already identified these concepts. Maybe explore top relations. This can be interesting just to remind myself that the top relation is behavioral patterns. So this is great. This is in. How to implement new behavioral patterns into our everyday life. So you can see it here. So this is great that it's inside. I can deselect those nodes, mark it as complete. Zooming in on each topic we did already, so mark it as complete. Discourse entrance points. Okay, this is interesting because here I can see what are the interesting entrance points into this discourse that can allow me to develop it a little bit better. If you want to learn more about how it works, you can click the question mark here and it's going to explain to you everything, how it works. I'm not going to go into detail about this now. I'll make a separate video about that. But basically, it's talking about the different practices like Sistema, Tai Chi, meditation, and how those practices could be an interesting starting point to develop this discourse further. And also here we have one evolutionary understanding, resilience and evolutionary development. Great, so maybe I could even connect those two later. So this is something I'm going to keep in mind. I'll actually write down this here. So elaborate on the different body practices that served as an inspiration to ethos, and also talk about their connection to evolutionary development through behavioral change. So this is great because actually it's not at all what I expected from the first glance, because I wanted to focus more on art. But here it actually proposes me to think of a completely different tangent, where I will be talking about the inspirations and the practices that inspired me and how they fit into this idea of evolutionary development. So that would be really interesting to explore also, and maybe it's going to be a separate text that I can write on this topic. Okay, so then we move on and we check off this part here. Move on to the structural gap. So by the way, here I can actually undo, so it deselects those. Okay, mark it as complete. Structural gaps are the parts of the topic that could be connected better. So we see here that we have two topics, one on the physical practice, another one on exploring behavioral patterns, and it proposes us to think of this gap. We actually just wrote it down before, so we can skip this one and just ask it to show another gap. It's going to generate, so we highlight it in the network and ask it to show another one and another one until we find some interesting connection. So for example, here it proposes us to think of the fluid algorithms versus cybernetics. So this is kind of a lot like more technological aspect of the practice that we can develop further, which can be interesting for us. So maybe talk more about the technology behind and the algorithms that were developed on the basis of A2S physical practice. Great. So I then reset the highlight, so we get rid of this stuff, mark it as complete, bridge the structural gap we did, save the questions we did, and then we can also use the AI to generate some interesting content in relation to this. So one way to do that is to highlight the structural gap and to ask the GPT-3 to generate a research question that would link those two ideas together in an interesting way. What it does is that it identifies the topics that exist in this text but are not yet well connected, and then it proposes a question how you could develop this discourse further, which is supposed to serve as an inspiration for you, basically. So here it says, what are the benefits of decoupling Tai Chi techniques with regular online meditation for behavioral objectives? So combining Tai Chi and meditation, how it can affect behavior. We can even also add then in the notes here how to combine those practices to achieve behavioral effects. Great. So here's how we can develop this further. And also what you can do is just change AI module and then also use a different one here. So for example, I can just skip to the next advice. So it chooses two other clusters. For instance, here it says focus and scale, and then I can ask it to challenge it, for instance. So here it's gonna be using GPT-3 AI to challenge the connection between the two topics and propose me some content which I can integrate into my own text, right? So here's talking about some focus exploration ability, how it can be used to affect our practices. Here, focusing on this concept can help develop a certain level of resilience. So how we can actually develop a certain level of resilience, but we are not guaranteed that it's going to happen, and that we need some more of the different approaches to help ourselves think about it further. So this can be maybe something interesting to add about how we can add some more practices or even approaches. So maybe this is where the aesthetic part will come in. Adding the aesthetic approach can make the effects of A2S more multi-dimensional and can help us develop behavioral changes that are implemented not only on the psychological level, but also on the level of our perception, for example, or let's say subconscious. Because If we talk about artistic stuff, then perhaps this is how it works. So as you see, using the AI, we're generating ideas to add more and more stuff into our notes. So I will mark this off as complete. This is a great feature, reveal underlying ideas. So basically it removes the most influential nodes from the graph to show us what's hiding behind them. And it does that by selecting the most influential ones and then removing them here. So then I see what are the topics that come up after we remove them. If I don't want to read the graph myself, I can use the AI to interpret them. Okay, so you see that there's a lot about ethos practice, Tai Chi, everyday science, technological utopia. So these are interesting topics to explore. Maybe dig a little bit deeper on them. There are more here actually. Body and mind, Fox exploration, fluid algorithms, operating systems. So all this stuff can be added into our text. For example, I could talk more about this idea of technological utopia. That sounds interesting to me. So somehow making this text a bit more political, talk about technological utopia and how ATOS is a way to counteract this approach and bring our thinking about the future closer to the body. Okay, so save this, hide high-level ideas, mark this as complete, and then reiterate the steps which we just did. So just look at all the high-level ideas, look at the specific nodes that you find interesting. Then we reset the graph, so we return all the deleted nodes by clicking here back into the graph. So we have the original version of it again. And then it's time to either import more data, generate more AI content. We can skip this too. Finalize the node. So this is great because now I have some nodes and I can use the AI to finalize some ideas and to create an outline on the basis of which I'm going to write either a new version of this article or on the basis of which I'm going to enrich the article that I already have. So I do this by clicking here, AI outline. And what it does is that it uses GPT-3 to generate an outline based on my notes. So here, it proposes me to write about the aesthetic benefits of ATOS, combining physical practice, evolutionary development, and technology for behavioral change. And then it provides me a sort of like a bullet point structure for how I could write about it. And here it's proposing me to think about evolutionary development and aesthetic approach and algorithms. So this is something really interesting. I think I'm going to connect now this discourse that I wanted to add about the arts, how arts allow us to think about a possible future in a way that is decoupled from standard ways of thinking and enhances our understanding of the world in a less scientific way. It's just a note for myself to keep in mind. And what I can then do, if I'm lazy, I can copy and paste this text here into ChatGPT and ask it to write something for me. Or I can simply go back to my text. And now I know that I want to write more about evolutionary development. So I'll even search for when it appears. So I'm probably going to add a paragraph here. And I'm going to write about how we can sort of use this approach to also evolutionary develop ourselves, because here I'm talking about how the human body was shaped by the evolution, but now I can also talk about how the practice itself can help us evolve. So I'm going to write how the practice can help us evolve. I'm going to just mark it bold so I remember to develop this idea after. Go back to my graph and also see here about how I wanted to also write about the different practices combined. So I'm going to search for Tai Chi. So here it was the inspirations and how it goes through the different stages. Okay, so maybe here I can actually add something about those practices, how these practices combine in A2S to produce a different kind of perception in the body. So this is another idea that we developed from the graph is going to be added here. As you see, we have one to be added here, another one on evolutionary development and how the practice can help us solve. And then finally, the artistic aspect, which I know I kind of wanted to write about towards the end. So artistic implications and technology, because I wanted to link those two topics as I was suggested by the earlier exploration that I did. And now I just review my notes to see if I missed anything or not. So also art thinking about the future. Okay, so I'm gonna add this. Technological utopia, counteract approach. Okay, this we don't maybe need. Then behavioral changes. Okay, so also art as evolutionary practice, something about how behavioral change on unconscious level. So these are just some notes for how I'm going to develop this text and which parts of the text. And then finally this idea here, elaboration on body practices I did, and explore the artistic and aesthetic aspects of the practice I did. So this is basically how I would approach this task of improving my existing text, copy and paste it from my editor, in this case WordPress, into infranodus, follow the workflow to analyze it and to look at it from different perspectives, following this text diagnostics protocol that is implemented in the tool, review high-level ideas using the AI, write down some notes on this topic here in the notepad. And then finally, once I have everything ready, generate an outline just to have a good overview. You can also generate a summary and then add the parts of the text that you want to develop further into your original writing, into the parts where you think it would fit the best. And then you write it again. And then what I'm going to do in the end is to copy and paste the final version, bring it back into the graph and see how well it was implemented somehow and how well I realized my original intention. Another really nice measure here is the semantic variability. I always use it to see whether my text is in a good state. So I aim it to be in the green zone. You will recognize it because it's a nice green color, which means that we explored all the different topics sufficiently enough, but they're still connected on the global level. These are the 4 states that your text can be in. Depending on the intention of the text, you want to be in a different part of the text. So for example, if you talk about poetry, you would want it to be at the top left quadrant of these graphics here. Right now we're more in the focus state, so I want to make it a bit less focused on movement practice and more on the art. So this is why I'm going to go here. And by the way, you have the explanation of each part here, which shows a little bit how it works. And also you have all the help articles here that explain, you know, how this approach is actually implemented and what are all those 4 different states that you can use when you're writing a text. So this is also a pretty useful feature. I recommend you to use it. Might seem a little bit esoteric or complicated at the beginning, but once you get it, it's a really nice way to help yourself come out of your patterns of writing and to make it a bit more diverse if you have a tendency to get focused on one idea like I do, or to focus more if you had a tendency to be really dispersed. So this algorithm is always going to drive you to some sort of equilibrium where you have enough diversity in a text, but also you keep it coherent and connected. This is, in general, I would say, one of the main objectives of infranodus, to allow you to perceive or read a text in this way, or to write it in that way. So I hope you find it interesting. Try it out with your own writing, with your own text. Let me know how it works in the comments to this video or through our support channel. I'm going to leave a link to this workflow description below and to the final text also once I publish it in the video, so you can see, what came out from it eventually. Thank you very much, and I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. Thank you.